morning, everybody. I'm Ellen O'Malley-Donbath from the Dublin Red Crisis Centre. For many years, thousands of survivors of rape and childhood sexual abuse have come through the doors of the various services like the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, 1 in 4, Carry, and other rape crisis centres around the country, and other agencies, where they have told their stories and had their stories believed. Through the therapy and counselling that they received, they were able over time to be healed and to get on with their lives. However, the scars will never go away. Their stories were harrowing and are harrowing. As a society, we were very slow to acknowledge that these atrocities were happening in our midst, and far too often the victims of these crimes were treated as outcasts and as troublemakers. With the publication of the Ryan and Murphy reports in 2009, their stories were validated publicly for the first time. This all-important public acknowledgement had the effect of removing the isolation, the stigma, and the shame that survivors have since come forward in unprecedented numbers and are seeking the support of the various frontline services. For example, at the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre in 2009, the 24-hour national helpline first-time callers were up by 42% on 2008. First-time callers. At 1 in 4, where survivors of institutional abuse in particular have had the support of its advocacy services, the numbers of clients were double that of 2008. After the fallout from the Ryan report, the shock waves felt throughout the country were somewhat calmed by the report that followed from the Minister for Children's Office, promising to implement the recommendations of the Ryan report. As you've heard from our other speakers, there were a 99-point implementation plan drawn up by his office, which was welcomed by all. However, to date, 1 year later, hardly any of the recommendations have been implemented. While promises were made to survivors to provide extra resources to respond to their needs, the reality is that funding has been further cut to agencies at the front line, and many survivors are languishing on waiting lists as we speak. This is completely unacceptable. While we are acutely aware that the survivors of past childhood sexual abuse are being let down by the cutbacks in services, it is alarming also that children who are currently being abused are also being let down and betrayed. Allegations of childhood sexual abuse are not always even investigated. The disarray of child protection services was also highlighted in the damning report by the Ombudsman for Children, Emily O'Reilly's investigation into the implementation of Children First across the HSE. In 2010, children who are sexually abused in Ireland do not have access to counselling services nationally. Carry, the only NGO providing such services across the country, had to close down a number of its services due to cutbacks in the past year. I mean, that is just so unacceptable. We were promised that this area would not suffer the cutbacks. We requested that our grants be left as they were, but no, the cutbacks came and are having a detrimental effect on the service's ability to respond to the demands that are there. Is this acceptable in 2010 in Ireland? Do we want to see another Ryan report in 30 years' time? The most meaningful monument to the survivors who have suffered so much would be to enshrine the rights of children in the Irish Constitution. We call on the government to run this referendum now, and to run it on its own, separate from any by-election. Surely we owe this to our children. Irish society will never be the same after these reports. There can be no doubt in our minds that Irish society has not cherished all its children equally. And we have a big task ahead of us to make sure that we educate ourselves appropriately, have adequate laws in place and work towards making absolutely sure that what happened in 20th century Ireland to our children will never be repeated.